Hello, I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer, and welcome back to Gospel Minded, the show where we spend a few minutes each week reflecting on themes of psychology, behavioral health, emotional well-being, as these things manifest themselves in the weekly gospel reading. So again, not a substitute for any kind of work you might be doing with a therapist or any kind of spiritual direction you might be receiving from a cleric, but these themes related to psychological, behavioral, emotional well-being are very often intertwined with the scriptures. And today is absolutely no exception. It is Epiphany Sunday. So happy Epiphany. Part of me wishes that we were celebrating Epiphany every Sunday because I just love this gospel reading from today's liturgy. And it's just full of so much material that's very rich when it comes to themes related to psychology or behavioral health or emotional health. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. Interestingly, the points that I want to bring up come from the last line of the gospel today. So just to recap, here we are, Magi, it says from the east, have come to do the Christ child homage. They encounter the Christ child and Mary, his mother. They do him homage. And then at the end of the gospel reading, it says, after this encounter with the Lord, they departed for their country by a different route. So I just want to take a minute and talk about that line. The gospel says they were warned in a dream to return home by a different route. Because in the bigger context of this gospel, we know that Herod was doing dastardly deeds to try and find the Christ child because he took it as a threat to his own rule. And he figured he could get some information from these Magi, but instead they were warned in a dream to go home by a different route. So one of the themes that I think is so important in that is adjust, adapt. We're going to change plans a little bit. It was important for the Magi in the gospel reading for today, and it's important for you and me as well. When I'm in therapy with my patients, so often, the things that cause people the most heartburn, the things that are most distressing, the things that people have to wrestle with the most often are when things don't go according to plan. And truth of the matter is that in life, things don't go to plan a lot. It happens for me, it happens for you, it happens to everybody. It's a way of acknowledging that life happens. And if we think we've got it all sorted out and everything is going to fit into place perfectly all the time, we're deceiving ourselves because that's not really how things work out very often. And if things do go your way and things are in place and things work well all the time for you, tremendous. But plenty often that's not the case. And so how do we respond? We have to be able to adapt. We have to be able to adjust. So the wise men, these Magi, did that in today's reading. They're going to go home by a different path. Adjust, adapt. So how do we do that? What happens when something goes wrong in my life or something comes up that I didn't expect? I have to change routes. I have to go on a different course. How am I going to respond to that? It sounds easy to just go a different way, take a new route, make changes. But you and I know that it's not always so simple. A couple of things. First of all, I think some cognitive reframing is very helpful and very important. We need to be able to shake hands and tolerate the fact that we're going to have to make adjustments in life. And some things aren't going to go our way. We're going to have to maneuver and adapt. And that's just part of life. And that's okay. So I think having that mindset that if things don't go my way, it's all right. We'll figure something else out. That mindset piece is huge. Very important to have that good attitude. And second of all is to get repetitions and practice. We're all going to have several opportunities to adjust, kind of build the plane while we're flying it, or build the ship while we're sailing it kind of thing. We're all trying to just sort of figure it out. and we can, and we will, one foot in front of the other. And so when situations come up, give yourself the opportunity to recognize, okay, right now, I wish it was a little bit different, but this is the situation I find myself in. Wasn't exactly prepared for this, but I can do it. And a lot of times there's evidence that we can be resilient in the midst of the unknown or in the middle of challenging circumstances or scenarios. A lot of times we've got a lot of evidence that we can adapt and overcome. And so when we have to go a different route, when we have to make some changes, be okay with it, because it really is okay. Get yourself some practice, work on it. Over time, the more we become resilient, the more that we work through difficult circumstances and adapt to changing situations, the more comfortable we'll be kind of pivoting, thinking on our feet, making out a new way. And so you've got this. We can do it. The Magi went home by a different route. We too can make adjustments and adapt as we need to. We're very good at that as humans. Another piece to this is a little bit more spiritually centered, I think, this idea of going a different way. So here these Magi had seen the Lord. They found the Christ child and they went a different way. Almost as if to say, once you've met Christ, how can you not go a different way in your life? And I think this is true in therapy as well. When I'm working with some of my patients, a lot of times in therapy, especially as they're talking about things, they'll come to this sort of aha moment. They'll get some insight. And it just sort of naturally happens when you're talking about things. When we express things verbally, somehow it comes out differently and it hits us differently than when we just think about stuff in our mind. So when people express things out loud, they'll have this like, whoa, gain really great insight. And once we've experienced that insight, once we've recognized the truth, once we've met the Lord, how can we not go a different way? Start making some changes in our life. So that's beautiful, and a beautiful thing to think about and reflect. And that was one of the points that I wanted to bring up for today's talk, was just on that last line from the gospel. And then the other piece of this that I wanted to talk about today is, what did the Magi do? They came, they did homage to the Christ child, and they brought gifts. So I want to take a minute and talk about that, because here we are now close to the end of the Christmas season. Christmas is a great time of year, and one of the things that characterizes Christmas is, in a lot of families, a lot of cultures, gift giving. And it's an important, meaningful gesture that happens not just at Christmas, but other times of the year too, for birthdays, anniversaries. There are a lot of different reasons why we may give gifts. But I want to take a second and reflect on the significance of gifts, and to just highlight that physical gifts aren't the only way that we can communicate and show love and respect and affection. So back in 1992, there was a guy named Gary Chapman who wrote a very important book called The 5 Love Languages, or The Love Languages. Maybe you've heard of it, and if not, I highly encourage you to go and Google it and look it up, because the point of this book is that people can receive love and express love in many different ways. And the 5 that are highlighted in this writing are words of affirmation. People like having words of affirmation. Acts of service, doing something for somebody that we love or care about. Spending quality time with somebody else. The act of a physical touch can be very important. And then actual giving of tangible gifts. But the point is that giving of a physical gift is just one of any number of ways, and the book highlights these other 4 as well. The words of affirmation, acts of service, spending quality time, physical touch. The reason I'm bringing this up is because maybe when we think about what we're giving somebody, the gifts, perhaps what they're going to want the most, perhaps what's most meaningful or important to them isn't actually some tangible trinket or some physical thing. Perhaps it's you. Perhaps it's time that they can spend with you. Perhaps your kind words or praise means more to them than any physical thing that you could give. Perhaps doing something for your spouse or your significant other, your loved one, is going to make them feel more loved, more valued than anything else you could do. And so I bring this up because here we are now, we've finished Christmas and we'll be back until next year, but there are other opportunities to show love to the people that we encounter every day. If you've not done it yourself, I ask that you go and look at some of the literature on the 5 love languages, and there's a short test, 30 questions online if you just type it in. And I did it myself, and it was very revealing. I didn't even really take the time to consider that what is most special to me is when people I love give words of affirmation or spend quality time with me. So I don't know what it is for you. It's probably a little bit different for everybody, but how can we really give the best gift, the perfect gift, if we don't know what we ourselves want, and if we don't have that conversation with others? I intend to have that discussion with my spouse. What would make you feel most loved? How would you feel most appreciated or valued by me? Maybe it's not with something physical. Maybe it is one of these other things. But I think the Magi show us that at any rate, giving something that's very meaningful, super important, and a great day to think about that and reflect on that, on this solemnity of the Epiphany. So, happy Epiphany. I hope you have a great week. Thank you for joining me today. Again, Dr. Garrett Boyer for Gospel Minded. Take care.